Hi, this is Hall of Famer Eric Dickerson.
What's up, everybody? I'm Matt Leinart, 2004 Heisman Trophy winner.
Hey, I'm Zane Gonzalez.
Hi, I'm Matt Barry from ESPN. You're getting ready to watch one of the best college football podcasts ever. It's the Harris Highlight Show.
You're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
And you're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
And you're listening to the Harris Highlight Show. Enjoy it.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from the Chateau in Monrovia, California. This is the Harris Highlight Show. Joining me this week is our college football analyst, Josh Schaefer, our college football expert, Lyle Goldstein, our executive producer, Brady Klein. I'm your host for the evening, Blake Harris. Gentlemen, how's everyone doing? How's everyone recovering from that 2004 repeat of the Natty that we saw last night?
2004 repeat. I got major USC vibes. Also, Man United's top of the league. Let's go. Also, can we put Brady full screen here real quick? Let's put Brady full screen. Bro, collared shirt that's not a polo? Unbuttoned?
Full collared, rolled the sleeves up, but I got a t-shirt underneath.
Wow.
You know, just casual. It's casual.
It's cute.
This is rare. This is a rare sight.
It's cute, and I didn't spend
No.
like the last 2 days going through my entire closet to make sure all my clothes fit when you go on a diet and lose weight, right, Blake?
Oh, I wouldn't know.
It starts
diet
tomorrow.
starts
Starts
The diet
tomorrow.
starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
It has always started tomorrow.
Well, Josh, just you wait. Give it a few weeks, and you'll see an even better outfit from me. I can promise you that.
A few
All right.
days.
A few weeks.
Oh, a few weeks. All right.
Yeah.
All
But
right,
anyways, I'm sad. College football's over.
well,
Whoa. We've got some FCS schools getting ready to start, though, don't we?
we do. And I think isn't like isn't there some FBS team or something like that didn't play, or was it just UConn the only one? Because I thought I saw something where like New Mexico, or it's like New Mexico State. I think they're playing in the spring, so we actually are getting some FBS football this spring.
This
So-
should turn into a Big West show. Or a Big
Big West
Sky.
show.
Big Sky.
All right, guys. So we got a jam-packed show tonight. Obviously, we're going to recap the Natty from last night, talk about everything from the game, at least that I can remember. At least that I can remember. I'm kidding, of course. Guys, so before we get to everything that happened in the game last night, we're going to be talking about performances, what this means for Alabama, what this means for Ohio State. Where does Alabama rank among the best teams we've seen recently? We're going to be comparing them to that 2019 LSU team because a lot of people have been having discussions on that on Twitter. So it'd be fun to see what everyone's thoughts are on how this team would stack up against that team. But before we do that, some ground rules to get to. First and foremost, make sure to follow the show on Twitter at the HH Show _. We posted a lot over there. Josh was killing it last night in the Twitter game during the Natty. So thank you, Josh. Well done. Well done. You did it free of charge too, so you really do love to see it. Follow us on Instagram at Harris Highlight Show. So if you're on Twitter, Instagram, you guys can find us over there. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Search us up, Harris Highlight Show. The links are in the description below. You can find that as well. You guys can support the show via Super Chat. So if there's any questions you have for us, if there's anything you'd like to hear our thoughts on, you guys can donate $1, $2, $5, $100, $1,000. It's up to you. You can donate however much you want. Your comment comes up in a nice, shiny, cool color. We get to read your comments, and again, it helps support the show. So we can do this on a week-to-week basis, or you guys can become Patreon members for as little as $1 a month. You guys can get behind-the-scenes benefits, get into this cool group chat, and we had about, I think it was a month and a half ago, we had like a group Zoom call 30 minutes prior to our show. We're going to have another one of those soon. So if you want to get on a group Zoom, talk college football with us for 30 minutes or so, you guys can get into that for, again, as little as $1 a month. Some exciting news, guys. The, I think, 5th annual Harris Highlights Show award show, fifth annual Harris Highlights Award Show is officially in 2 weeks. It's the only college football award show that is decided entirely by the fans. So in next week's show, we are going to be giving you guys the nominees for all the different categories. You guys can go vote during the show. You guys can vote after the show. Voting's going to be open for 1 week. If there's any categories you guys have any kind of categories you'd like to suggest, you guys can hit us up on Twitter at the @HHShow_. Let us know. And maybe you guys can pick a category for us, because usually we have 15 to 20 every year, but there's always something clever that you guys can come up with. So again, stay tuned for that next week. The Harris Highlights Award Show is in 2 weeks. Boys, dress to impress, as always. So
if you get that from earlier, that's called a tease, Josh. I teased.
Well, you have 2 weeks to find a tie, so this is your advanced warning on that. Guys, we have to announce the Bowl Mania winner. Now, if you go to the Bowl Mania group, because we did start a few games late, we did start after, I think it was the BYU game, which was the third game. So unfortunately, the people that came in at the top, they don't count because they had those 3 games already picked. And it was kind of, unfair to everyone that hadn't joined yet, hadn't made any picks yet. So I had to take those 3 out and base it off that. And based off that, Tap Dal 2020, you are officially the winner. So Tap Dal 2020, if you're out there, if you're watching at any point, hit us up on Twitter at the @HHShow_. Shoot us a DM with a screenshot proving that you are, in fact, Tap Dal 2020. We're going to get you on a future show to talk about how you won, what went into your picks, and it'll be a fun time. So, again, if you're watching out there, hit us up. I think, should we put like a 2-week thing where if he doesn't reply, doesn't say anything to us, we
that sounds
runner up? All right, so I'll look 2 weeks. So you got 2 weeks to find us on Twitter. Hit us up, and we can get you on the show in the future show. Again, if he in 2 weeks isn't, we'll go to the runner-up, and we'll see how that goes. So again, Tap Dal 2020. Congratulations, you have officially won. Also, one final note, guys, you guys can join our Discord server. The link to that is in the description below of this video. You guys can go talk college football. There's a bunch of different categories, a bunch of different things. So it's a lot of fun. So if you like college football, if you like talking college football with college football fans, I jump in there every now and then. So you might get a surprise. You might get to talk with me. Go over there to the Discord. Maybe these 3 can set up Discords and they can get in there. So, oh, you did? Did you say you did?
I said, oh boy.
Oh boy. All right, guys. Well, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's talk about the national championship. Ohio State, Alabama. Bama. Oh, yeah. This was a game for the first quarter. Game for the first quarter and a half or so, and then Bama just went into high gear. They just ran away with the game. They won by 28 points. Guys, what a game. So again, we're going to be breaking down a lot. We're going to be breaking down performances, just everything overall. So I'm going to throw it to whoever wants to kick things off with whatever they want to talk about is, I guess, their main takeaway from the Natty last night.
I think every week we've kind of just added on to this. Notre Dame is a scapegoat for everybody else in college football. And this week, I think we just threw in another team like that. It's just, we saw all season long that Alabama was the best team in the country. And they proved that again last night. And I don't know, you can, play your hypotheticals. We can try to answer questions that we don't know. I don't know if the game would have been different if it was Clemson. Ohio State embarrassed Clemson, and Ohio State got embarrassed by Alabama. So I think that Alabama clearly was the best team in college football. What does it tell you when your 3 best players on offense? Okay, let me specify that. Your 3 best skill players on offense were top 5 in the Heisman voting. 2 of them went to New York, we'll say, as just a phrase, just a random, I guess, phrase at this point. They didn't actually go. But, yeah, I mean, it was just Alabama's game to lose going in before we even kicked off. And they showed that they were the better team. The fact that when Dickerson came out at the very end of the game, he had a torn ACL. Was it an ACL or was it an MCL?
ACL.
Oh, ACL.
Hey.
He was the Remington winner. He was not supposed to play in that game. He was not medically cleared, but had been lobbying to go out and snap the ball so that he could just take a knee and end the game. And the fact that they let him go out and do that was great. But it just showed.
The snap. The first snap, they fumbled the snap.
I just think, and this is good for him. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what does it tell you that when he went on the field, all of the Alabama players were hugging him and they were excited about it, and the Ohio State players could only sit there and watch? The game was over. And I thought that was just something that stood out to me, was at that point in the game, everybody knew the game was over. The Alabama players knew the game was over, and they were more focused on one of their guys who's been hurt, who came into the game to snap the ball on the last couple of plays. And I thought that was so funny because, You're just looking at the way that these guys are all reacting on offense to a player getting in the game and not you're 30 seconds from a national championship because they knew. They killed everybody they played all season long. And it was just showing up to do business at this point.
I do feel a little bad for Ohio State because last week on this show, or on Thursday when we had this show, I said I thought the game would be close, and that was barring everything that happened about 3 hours before kickoff. Now, I don't think all these lost Ohio State players make the whole difference. I think Bama still wins by at least 2 scores, but I think it could have stayed closer for longer. You lose your best 2 defensive linemen. Trey Sermon gets hurt on the first play. That doesn't help. I mean, you lose some of your best players. That just makes it harder from the get-go. But Bama as a whole, yeah, I mean, they were clearly the best team. They handled everybody they played this year with the exception of Florida, who kept it close. And I talked about it with Devontae Smith on Thursday about the Heisman, and Fowler and Herbstreit did a lot of it last night too, talking about this senior class that decided to all come back, decided they wanted another championship, and they went out and did it. They did it the right way. Mac, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, even Alex Leatherwood. I mean, a really good core group of seniors that led this team, and Bama very, very clearly the best team in college football.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter today where pretty much ever since Nick Saban took over at Alabama, if you were a recruit and you just never transferred
For at least 3 years.
left, yeah, you won a national championship with Bama, which is unbelievable. What is it? It's now his 7th total. I think 6 with Bama, so he now is in sole possession of the most college football national championships. And I think he said it on Scott Van Pelt after, where he was like, "Yeah, it's great that I have 7 national championships, but still, every night it haunts me, the 2 that I've lost." So that's what's keeping Nick Saban up at night, the 2 natties that he lost. So, Braid, I'll let you share your thoughts before I get to my takeaways.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too in depth just yet. I'll save that for a bit later in the show if we continue to dive into this, which we will. But my overall takeaway from it was people I've seen say, "Well, what if Trey Sermon didn't get hurt?" Well, you see what Master T did in the game last night. He performed very well. He did a great job stepping up, having been overshadowed by Trey Sermon for so long in the second half of the season. I don't think it would have made much of a difference, if at all of a difference. But what we saw from Alabama last night, like you guys said earlier, and we saw from a tweet, I don't remember who tweeted it a few weeks ago, is this isn't a college football, or this isn't a Notre Dame problem. It's a college football problem. It's how do you compete with the mastermind that is Nick Saban? No matter how good of a coach you are, there is an upper echelon of Nick Saban. He's on the pedestal all by himself. Yeah, he's got the national championships. Yeah, he's got the recruits. He just has the football mind and mentality to continuously come back and get better and better every year. They're saying, "Oh, this is Nick Saban's best Alabama team." I think it is. You compare it to last year's LSU team. Looking at the LSU team last year, yeah, they had all these guys go in the draft, whatever. But from the outside looking in on that LSU team from 2019, 2020, it was solely focused on Joe Burrow, right? Everyone was pretty much focused on the performance Burrow has had. All right, yeah, they had Jamar Chase. Yeah, they had Justin Jefferson, CEH. They had all these great players, but they didn't get the spotlight that Burrow did. That's where this Bama team differs. It is, all right, yeah, Mac Jones is really good. He got a lot of hype. But then the next game, he wouldn't do much. And then all of a sudden, hey, look, it's Najee Harris. Oh, the next game, hey, look, it's Devontae Smith. Hey, look, it's, Alex Leatherwood, Patrick Surtain. There were so many different guys on this Alabama team that had a spotlight, which I think the title of this video did make Alabama one of the best, if not the best, all-around football team we've seen in the last maybe 20 years. And it's a shame that every team didn't get to play a full schedule this season because of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I think every year there's always, after the national championship, it's always our first show. It's literally, is this team that just won the Natty the best team ever? We did it with LSU last year, which, again, they have a legitimate case. We did it with Clemson the year before. And again, we'll get to that. That'll be our next topic about, are they the best team we've seen in the last decade or so? But just overall, this Bama team, I think I said this on the show last week, when you have a spread that it was up to 8, it got up to 10 yesterday at Circa about right before the game. So it got up to 10. Anytime you see a spread like that, it makes everyone think, oh, you're getting an Ohio State plus 10 gift. But then you just know whoever was on the other end, meaning Bama, they're going to run away with the game. Now, I did think that Bama was going to win by at least 10, and they won by 28 points. I mean, this Bama team was just so dominant. They can strike you on any end. The thing that I just don't understand, what was Ohio State doing in regards to Devontae Smith? Like I was back watching the highlights. I just found the Devontae Smith highlights just of like every route that he ran, and I don't get what they were doing. I don't get they were doing on him. They weren't guarding him, and it was like in the second half when they were switching linebackers onto him, just hoping that would help. I was just shocked that they weren't just double teaming him. If Devontae Smith, if he beats you, he's going to beat you. Let the other guys beat you. Don't let Devontae Smith go for. I don't have him right in front of me. Actually, I do. I mean, what was his final line? 12 catches, 215 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what Ohio State was doing there. Justin Fields, he did have that one run that was like 35 yards or something like that. But for the most part, he just was out of it. He wasn't the Justin Fields, in previous weeks. I think that rib injury that I don't think they officially
they called it a hip pointer, but it was ribs.
He was clearly struggling. I don't think the loss of Trey Sermon made that much of an impact. I did think he was probably going to go for 100 yards or so, but for the most part, Master Teague, he did fine, but I don't think losing Trey Sermon did much. And Lyle mentioned it as well, losing some key D-line pieces for Ohio State. Again, it hurt them, but I don't think it made that much of an impact. And again, it just goes to show Bama, they're up here. The Ohio State, the Clemsons, they're right here. Notre Dame, they're like right about here with Oklahoma, and everyone else is down here. This Bama team, it was a dominant performance, and that's the thing. I mean, Ohio State, they were deserving to be in there, but it just goes to show how big of a gap there truly is in college football.
Yeah, real quick, Blake, you brought up the point that you watched all over a majority of the Devontae Smith routes and just the ISO cam on him. It was. I want to say that with Shaun Wade, we were talking about this in the group chat. It's like, is his draft stock going down? He's not playing. He looked a step slower than he has all season long.
Go look at the
swing route one when Smith came in motion. That was something
behind the entire time. And what I saw there was like Shaun Wade he just looks out of it. It didn't look like the normal Shaun Wade.
No, I'm telling you, go back and watch the highlights. And before Lyle goes, it was early on. It was his like 30 or 40-yard catch to put him on like the 10-yard line. Legit, Shaun Wade looked like he was jogging. Behind Devontae Smith. So I don't know what was going on there, but I need to go back and again, I guess pay more attention to Shaun Wade throughout the game. But that one play is the one that really stood out to me.
To be honest, he didn't have a great year all year. It kind of felt
not at all.
The whole defense struggled. But for a guy that was supposed to be one of your best defensive players, like he struggled throughout the year, and especially last night. Look, a lot of credit goes to Sark. Sark's play calling last night was unreal. Like it was the Devontae Smith touchdown where it looked like he was going to run a jet sweep to his right. He moves back to his left, like he's still in the backfield, and Mac throws a swing pass to him for the touchdown. That's a really, really good play call. But on Ohio State's part, you can't be throwing linebackers on this guy. If you throw a linebacker on Devontae Smith, like goodbye. It's over.
Especially on the seam route where Devontae Smith had that 40-something yard touchdown where he was in the left slot. Yeah. They had the linebacker shift over onto him, and just you're gone after that. And Josh, sorry if I just jumped in front of you, but Lyle brought up a good point about Sark that I was going to be saving, but I'll bring it up now. Is the way Sark, even if it wasn't all Sark because he's leaving, he's going to Texas, was officially announced as a Texas head coach today. Congratulations, whatever. Effing horns up, whatever you want to call it. The one thing we saw from this Sark offense, and I brought it up in, I think, last week's show, is most college offenses and defenses are very, very simple. There's not a lot of movement. There's not a lot of motion. There's not a lot of moving pieces once a play goes. 6 of the 7 touchdowns that Alabama scored last night had a pre-snap motion. Whether it was a tight end shifting side to side, a receiver, like you said on the Devontae one, it looked like he was going to jet sweep. That had 2. That had Miller Forrestall go from right slot to left slot, or H-back to H-back, and then Devontae go in motion from left to right. 6 of the 7 touchdowns had a pre-snap motion. And you saw what Ohio State's secondary was like earlier in the year against Indiana and against some of the other teams they played. It wasn't great. So what Alabama, I'm guessing a majority of Nick Saban and Steve Sarkisian did combined, was the smartest game plan is get Ohio State moving on the defensive side, which is what they did with the motion. So like Lyle said, the play calling by Sark and the game plan itself is one of the best that I've seen all year long, not only from Alabama, but across all of college football. And I'm kind of excited to see what he can do if he continues to keep some play calling duties when he's at Texas.
Like what
Yeah.
Stephen Smith said right here, just real quickly. Thanks, Stephen Smith, for the donation. Yeah, Steve Sarkisian with his play calling against Ohio State. It's going to make Texas a very interesting team next season when Iowa State and Oklahoma are going for the Big 12s. I mean, Steve Sarkisian, it's amazing what you can do playing calling wise when you're sober. I mean, he's been fantastic. He revived his career. Well, it's, no one who knows, but I mean, he's been great all season for them. But last night, again, the calls that he was running, well done by Sark, I got to say.
They were very what Lyle and Brady just said. It was genius, but it was so simple. And it's simply if you get those the secondary specifically moving, and you keep them on their toes and kind of confuse them, like you did with that with the one play they were inside the 10-yard line and he kind of went in motion like he was going to do the jet sweep and then stutter stepped and then swung out of the backfield. That's such a simple play. And the whole time Shaun Wade was behind it. And Kirk Herbstreit pointed it out on the broadcast. He was very slow reacting to it as if he thought that it was either going to be a jet sweep or that Smith was going to cut back and run the other way. He almost served as his own decoy when he was going in motion. And Shaun Wade was nowhere near the play. He had to get back and make
Is this the one where he came across motion across the entire field?
Yeah, and in the secondary, he ran through the end zone, taking his time to get over there. And I mean, this is one of the questions we had on last week's show was like, what's your one thing that you're going to watch for in this game? And for me, it was easy. It was Devontae Smith versus Shaun Wade. Shaun Wade asked for this. He wanted this matchup, and he got this matchup, and he got embarrassed. And like Lyle said, and it's another thing we pointed out last week, was Ohio State's secondary and Shaun Wade specifically did not have a great season. But going beyond that, you can make your excuses, whatever. He's supposed to be their best returner, not just on defense, but specifically in the secondary. Yes, this defense lost a lot, but for a team playing in the national championship game, for a team that had essentially killed everybody they played except for Indiana, they should have had more success in the secondary than they did this season. Shaun Wade wanted it. He got beat. He looked slow, and he simply could not guard Devontae Smith. And it was very simple that Ohio State needed to change something at halftime. Obviously, Devontae Smith got hurt. What was it? First play of the third quarter, and then didn't come back.
And still won the MVP.
He set a national championship record for receptions and a half.
I said it jokingly last week that he was like 20 catches away from breaking Amari Cooper's single season record for catches by an Alabama player. He literally could have potentially broken it. I mean, he would. I mean, he had what? Again, it was 12 catches. Yeah, I don't think, because like Josh said, it was one of the first plays in the second half. And I mean, guys, I mean, you're going to have to refresh my memory a bit. He didn't return in the second half, right?
No.
That's what I thought. So yeah, he could have broken it.
It was like one of the first plays, and he went out because he jammed his fingers. But what was so? I remember somebody asked last week. We had talked about the Shaun Wade versus Devontae Smith matchup, and then and that was earlier in the show when we were doing the preview, and then when the Q&A came around, somebody asked. I think it was Stephen Smith. I could be wrong. He said he basically asked, "What's the matchup then? Like, what do you do? Like Shaun Wade struggled this year. He's the one that wanted this matchup. He had stuff to say about it. Do you put him on him? Do you have him shadowing him the entire game?" And we all kind of said, like, that's really interesting. And I remember one thing that I said was maybe you start seeing where Devontae lines up, see if Alabama was anticipating a shadow, see what types of matchups they can get. And ultimately, when the game actually happened, it didn't really matter, because whether you lined him up on the slot on the left side, like Brady pointed out, and he had the long touchdown, he simply cut inside slightly toward the linebacker, drew the linebacker to him, and then beat the linebacker. So if you're in that zone coverage, you're gone. Once you set him, it doesn't matter where they set him up. It didn't matter who was shadowing him, which Wade was for almost the entirety of the first half until that touchdown, which was that last offensive possession for Bama before halftime. But they had no answer, whether it was Shaun Wade, whether it was somebody else. Nobody had any answer for him. And like Patrick Mahomes tweeted, put anybody on him. Put everybody.
Everybody. I think that's why you saw them run so many plays that had a pre-snap motion or shift, is to see, are they shadowing Devontae Smith? It's very easy to tell. You move a receiver in motion. If the corner follows them, they're in man. If he doesn't, they're in zone. That's the easiest thing to figure out when you're the quarterback or an offensive coordinator or a receiver or whoever you are on the offensive side of the ball. One more thing, Josh, you talked about defensive confusion. I believe it was the Najee wheel route touchdown. They were going to, I don't remember when it was first or second quarter. but it was the one where he motioned in and then came right out of the backfield. No, I'm sorry, it was the play action and the wheel route there. You watch that, the linebacker and the corner both shift into the middle of the field. If you watch the back side of the play, you can see, or the back view, you can see the linebacker and corner shift, which put Najee Harris wide open. The simple movement threw off everything for Alabama, and it happened at the very beginning, it happened at the very end of the game, and all the way in between. So there's your formula, so to say, of how to expose a college defense is motion and movement, so you can create confusion, especially when it's a lacking secondary like we've seen from Ohio State.
All right, guys, I'm reading through the comments. I want to throw some of these comments on because we got some questions, some takeaways that people want to get to. We got this one. This is kind of a good one right here. Was the game against Clemson a fluke, or was Alabama just that good? Didn't seem like the same Ohio State team in both games. And I said this last week. The main reason why I thought Bama was going to win by double digits, everything went Ohio State's way last week. Everything went their way. Justin Fields had the best game of his life. Clemson looked pretty. They didn't look like normal Clemson. And I was thinking it was just everything was going their way. Now, granted, a lot went Bama's way yesterday. Again, losing Trey Sermon didn't help. Losing all the players on defense didn't help. Justin Fields having, again, a hip, whatever Brady said the injury was. Mm-hmm. But I think Bama is the much better team. But I also think, again, if Ohio State and Clemson were to rematch, I guarantee you it would not be a 3-touchdown game with Ohio State winning. It might not even be Ohio State winning the game if those two teams met again.
Yeah, I think that it's a different matchup, but I think it would have had the same kind of effect that the Notre Dame-Clemson matchup had. Obviously, Notre Dame is a very different team than Ohio State is. But I think, like we saw that first game that was 3 overtimes. Was 3 overtimes? Yeah, it was 3 overtimes. Mm-hmm. And whatever it was, and Clemson had Yui Ungalale in, who still threw for 404 touchdowns, which is insane. And I still reject the Trevor Lawrence narrative, Trevor Lawrence being out narrative. But then you get a chance in the ACC championship game and Clemson kills them. I personally would love to see what would happen if those teams met a third time. But then if you look at this matchup, again, Ohio State and Notre Dame are two very different teams. But if you look at it, I think that, like Blake said, I think everything went Ohio State's way. I'm not saying that that's how the refs had it, or Clemson was unlucky. No, Ohio State just played a hell of a football game. And then last night, Alabama played a hell of a football game. That's just how it went. I think that Bama was a better team than Ohio State. But yeah, if Ohio State and Clemson were to play again, I think it would be a lot closer. But I'm not going to say that Ohio State's going to win or Clemson's going to win. I just think that I think in both of those games, the team that deserved to win won, but also everything went their way. And I don't think it's hard to see that. And it was the same thing with the Notre Dame game. I mean, it didn't look like a blowout on the scoreboard. In reality, it was a blowout, but also Alabama had everything go their way against Notre Dame. Notre Dame couldn't catch a break. And it's just kind of the way that the ball bounces sometimes. But no, I don't think it was a fluke.
Yeah, I think more Bama's just the better team. I think whether they played Clemson or Ohio State, they would have handedly won. I think Ohio State deserved to be there. I mean, Josh summed that up pretty well. Mm-hmm. But I think Ohio State was really good. Bama was just that much better.
Yeah, there is a separation gap between, even 1 and 2 at this point, and what we saw last night and we would have saw, I think, with any other team in the championship game as well. I think Bama was just so complete and so put together. One thing I want to say, last thing I'll have to say about this game, I think we've pretty much hit everything, is I got to give major props to Jalen Waddle for even, trying to play. He had a pretty big play in the first half. He was definitely hurting still. Did you see him? Oh, yeah. You see him, no pun intended, waddle off the field? Get it? Because he was hurt and his last name's Waddle. Get it? That was funny. The way he limped off the field, you could tell he's hurt. And people all over social, current NFL players and even other college players were like, we respect the grit, but get out of the game. Right. You're not. We know how good of a receiver you are. We don't need you to come prove yourself. And we really didn't see much of him after that possession. Right. So I was going to mention that too. The fact that Jalen Waddle, he clearly wasn't 100%, but he wanted to be out there. Still finished. What do we got here? He still finished with 3 catches for 34 yards. Yeah. But yeah, he was clearly hobbled. So props to him for getting out there. So guys, again, we say it every year. Is this Natty team the best we've seen in recent memory? I know Alabama, they played an SEC only schedule that was kind of
fairly easy for the most part. They did handle A&M, and their game against Florida was close. And then we saw what they did against Notre Dame. We saw what they did against Ohio State. But for the most part, not a truly difficult schedule. Their defense, not as good as Bama defenses in the past. However, this is probably the best offense Nick Saban's had. This is one of the best offenses we've seen in recent memory. So, guys, before I get to your guys' take on this question right here, I just went to whatifsports.com and I loaded up Bama 2020 versus LSU 2019, and I'm going to do a quick sim on a neutral field. What are your guys' guesses for who's going to come out on top with
You
this,
should do it
with
10
this simulation?
times.
Blake, are you short round? Blake, are you short round?
Am I short round?
Yeah, because short round posted in the comments that he just did the same thing. Like 2 minutes
Did he
ago.
actually?
Yeah.
It would make a lot of sense if Blake was short.
It would
round,
make a lot of
being
sense.
Totally
You
honest.
guys got me this entire time. I have been
the last
short
2
round.
years.
All right, so we are going to use this sim one time, not 10, Josh, because this is going to be the determining factor.
Yeah, you got to do it more than once. Do it
Nope, just
best
one.
of 3. Best of 3.
All right, let's sim this bad boy right now, real quickly, guys. And this one, oh my, Brady. I mean, is there a way? I mean, can I share my
Yeah,
screen?
you can. If you have a different tab, you can go to share screen at the bottom,
Mhm.
Blake,
Okay.
application window or Chrome tab, and then click
Mhm.
on that, and it'll pop in.
All right, so we are going to do this right now, and let's get this bad boy open. That's not good right here,
Oh my
guys.
goodness.
Can you see this?
Let me
Loading it.
zoom in a little.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Because that says that LSU defeated Alabama 73-71 in 5 overtimes.
I think you got to sim it again.
Yeah, you got to do it at least one more
All
time.
right, so LSU wins the first round. They win round 1.
That would be
Navi had 7 touchdowns.
So Justin Jefferson, 9 catches, 157 yards. Jamar Chase, 8 catches, 144 yards. Devontae Smith, quiet game, only 12 for 137 with 2 touchdowns. Najee Harris, 147 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 5 rushing touchdowns.
How does Clyde Edwards-Helaire have 64 rushing yards, only 1 rush of more than 20 yards, and 5 touchdowns?
Hey, goal line, Josh. Goal
But
line.
he's terrible on the goal line. That's what doesn't make any sense.
All right, so let's exit out of this, and we'll do another sim right here just to see how these teams match up. And Alabama comes out on top. This one's not as exciting, 36-30.
Oh, this one looks like a great game. I mean, the
Yeah.
other one was just absolutely bonkers. So
30 points in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, it was a good thing to sim it 3 times, guys, because now we got Bama, LSU tied at 1 apiece. So let's do one final sim. And Alabama comes out on top by 7 in this one.
holy comeback.
After a near comeback by LSU right there. Let's look at these stats right here. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 18 attempts for 208 yards with 2 touchdowns. Devontae Smith, 9 catches, 100 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 tutties for Jalen Waddle. Najee Harris, 150 rushing yards.
What
And
were the passing stats?
we got Mac Jones, 33 of 38 for 421 and 4. Joe Burrow, 23 for 26 for 304 and 2. So there you go. Now, how do I
Confirm.
there we go.
Confirmed.
Perfect.
Alabama
So,
Alabama wins.
all right, guys. So, I mean, that first game, if we would have had that first game, that would have been the greatest college football game of all time.
Ever.
Like, no questions asked.
Wait,
Nothing would
did
ever
it
be
say
topped.
it went into overtime?
What's up?
Someone in the comments saying it 5 overtimes. Did that first game go into
No,
overtime?
no. The first one was 5 overtimes, 73-71.
That's awesome.
No defense being played. All right, guys. So, I mean, obviously, this is recency bias, but who do you guys think overall was, the better team, this 2020 Alabama team or the 2019 LSU team?
It's tough to say. So I'm gonna start off here, and this is something that I think I'll allude to later in the show when we have more conversations like this. But yes, you're right. I think recency bias is a thing. But I think it's worth pointing out there's a difference between who's the best college football team of all time and who had the best college football season of all time. And I think that goes for both teams and players. It seems, yes, you're right. It seems like every year we ask this question. So last year we were saying, is this team better? Is this LSU team better than the 2018 Clemson team? Like that was a question. That was a conversation we legitimately had in the Blaze Radio studio. And we pointed out that we had this conversation the year before too. It seems like every year we have this talk. I will say that last year going 15-0 is pretty unbelievable, and I think that's an argument that people have about LSU saying, "Oh, no one's ever gone 15-0 before." No one's ever been able to. Like a conference championship game and then 2 playoff games, like no one's had that before up until the last 6 years. So that's an argument that I'll throw out the window. Like we used to have teams back in like the 70s that were going 8-0 and winning national championships. But that's because they only played 8 games. Like that's kind of how it was this year with some teams. So I'll say that. I do want to point out this, and you can compare these and whatever as much as you want. But I've got their rankings up right here between the 2020 Alabama team and the 2019 LSU team.
Like statistical rankings?
Yeah, when it came for points per game, last year's LSU team was first in the nation with 48.4 points per game. Alabama this year was second out of 127 because obviously not everybody in college football played. But they had a better points per game statistic than LSU did at 48.5. And obviously when it comes down to opponent points per game or points per game allowed, Alabama had a significantly better ranking than LSU's did, a ranking of over 15 points in the rankings, but also they played fewer games. So I think that's one thing to consider. But both of these teams were incredible. I also think that it's worth pointing out Alabama played a full SEC schedule this year. And what does that mean compared to how they were in the past? Like, obviously they've played SC in the past and they would have played SC this year, and whatever that means, it's a Power 5 opponent that they would have played. But this is also an Alabama team that within the last 5 years has scheduled Mercer in week 10 and Chattanooga in week 10. Like, these are games that Alabama schedules late in the season. Like, hey, small schools, here's $1 million. Come get beat by 90. And all the SEC schools do that. You don't see Big 10 teams and Pac-12 teams and Big 12 teams do things like that, but you do in the SEC. It is important to note that although Alabama played fewer games than last year's LSU team did, their strength of schedule was better than LSU's. And it's not up for debate. Like, that's not me just giving my opinion. I mean, statistically, their strength of record and their strength of schedule were both better than LSU's last year. So I think maybe if you really look at it, who had the most impactful season in the sport, I might say Alabama, because of everything they went through, the fact that they had COVID cases in Tuscaloosa, the fact that they went through so much social justice stuff before the season started. And then obviously Saban had COVID and everything they went through. I think this might've been a more impactful season. But when it comes down to the more impressive season, I think 15-0 actually, it speaks for itself, even though they had more games to play.
Quick question. You just brought up something. Did Saban getting COVID get Sark a head coaching job?
No, I think
Devontae Smith and Mac Jones got Sark a head coaching job.
Did it solidify him a head coach? I agree, but like he took over as head coach for a week or two.
Yeah, he did. And
it's not. I feel like coaching this team's kind of like coaching the Lakers. It's not all that hard. But
bro, I'm telling you, man, get me in the Dodgers dugout. I'm guaranteeing an NL West title with them. I'm guaranteeing it.
Maybe not anymore because the Padres are pretty good. But
true.
2 years ago, the four of us could have coached the Dodgers.
Yeah, I agree with how stacked that Bama team is. I mean, granted, we'd have little work. It's being a football coach is a slightly little harder job than being an MLB manager. But yeah, I mean, Sark was fantastic. But Lyle, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on your takeaways between these two teams. According to What If Sims, it's Bama, but
yeah, I've given this some thought. I think I lean more on the side of LSU. And I personally thought LSU's defense was better than Alabama's, despite what the numbers say. And I try to factor in, do part of the numbers have something to do with LSU blew so many teams out and just dominated teams last year that they would start either taking their starters out or they would just prevent the rest of the game or off coverage or whatever. But it just always felt like to me that, Alabama's offense, they have a case. I mean, they have a serious case against LSU's, but I still would take LSU on personally both sides of the ball, just from the way they would just dismantle every team they played, especially as the season went on and on. Like, they had every test up against them. Like, they played Georgia in the SEC title game last year. They won 37-10. They gave up 10 points to a Georgia team that was fighting for a college football playoff spot. The wow factor that does it for me with LSU, and this is just diving into players, but for whatever reason, when I look at this, I kind of just sit back and say, whoa. The fact that Justin Jefferson, as a rookie in the NFL, might win Rookie of the Year, was the best rookie receiver, was a top 8 receiver, period, earning an All-Pro, 1,400 yards on a run-first team. Oh, by the way, when he played at LSU, he wasn't the best receiver on that team. That's what kind of sticks out to me is like, whoa, like this is the most loaded team I've ever seen. Like, I think LSU, the way they just dominated teams, will always stick out to me. And this Bama team's unbelievable. They have a case. I think they're definitely in that top 5, but I like LSU a little bit better.
They weren't a top-heavy team.
No, they
I
were
think
balanced.
in some instances, Alabama is, where no disrespect to Waddle, he obviously got hurt, or Mechie, or anybody else who catches passes on that Alabama team, but I think it's a little top-heavy. And I know we're going to talk about Devontae Smith later, and there's something that might sound like I'm contradicting myself when we get then. I promise you I will not, and I will explain it. But that LSU team last year, I mean, you look at everybody who caught passes last year, and like Lyle says, Justin Jefferson was the number 2 receiver on that team. I just think they were a little more spread out on both sides of the ball than Alabama was. I think Alabama is a little bit more top heavy, but that doesn't make them any less impressive.
So I brought this up earlier when I was talking about the game is, there was the spotlight factor, right? Everyone was just amazed about how, wow, Joe Burrow came out of nowhere and did this. I think we all sort of expected this from Alabama at the beginning of the year and pretty much every year. The one thing that was in consideration was, all right, hey, who will step up when Waddle goes down? How's that going to work? And is Mac Jones really the right guy to be the starting quarterback?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you remember when that was a discussion?
Yeah.
Mac Jones or Bryce Young, and Mac Jones.
People were like, oh, Mac Jones is a transitional quarterback. Like, he'll start. I said this. Like, he'll start, and then Bryce Young will take over the reins and be just fine. But Mac Jones proved to keep the spot and deserved it fully, being a Heisman candidate, going to New York, as Josh said. I think you compare these two teams, there's essentially an equivalent player from each team each year. So, like, all right, you have Thaddeus Moss on LSU. You got Miller Forrestall this year, Mac to Burrow. You got whatever receiver you want to compare to whatever receiver. You have Clyde, you have Najee. You even look at the defense. You have Stingley, you have Surtain. You have all these guys who are great players at their respected positions, and you essentially have an equivalent of them on this year's team. You look at it, they're almost identical. I don't know if Bama will have, 25, 29, 35 guys like LSU did get drafted. I think it was 17 total get drafted from LSU last year or signed.
I just remember that they had every position but left guard.
Left guard, yeah. Drafted or signed, I think is what it was. But whatever it was, you have all these guys. You essentially have an equivalent for them on the Alabama team this year, which is why I think it makes the comparison so much easier. You're not comparing, hey, what about 04 USC to this 2021 team or whatever it may be. They are literally a year apart, and they played.
Yeah.
Not the same pieces, but they played each other last year. And they played each other this year. We saw what the matchup was. So I think, for me, I'm going to go with the Alabama side of it, because what I remember watching Alabama week in, week out, and following them week in, week out this year is, in my mind, thinking, oh my God, they're just doing it over and over again. And it blew my mind every week. LSU, I was waiting for them to stumble. I was waiting for them to have that. And they really didn't at all last season. But I think Bama just had the more complete season than LSU did. LSU had like Josh said earlier, there's a difference between being the best team and the most talented team. I think, or what would you say earlier, Josh? The best versus the most flashy, or whatever it was.
The best team versus the best season, which is the same conversation we can have about Joe Burrow too. Last year, is he the best college quarterback of all time? Likely. No, he's not. Did he have the best season of any college football quarterback? Yes. Absolutely. Not close.
Yeah. So I think
mean that he's number one ever.
No, I think that's where this comes into play. Is I think LSU last year had the best season, going 15-0. Winning the national championship by double-digit points, winning all those games LSU did. Yeah, Bama had a restricted schedule. They still played 12 games. Or was it 13? I think it was 12 games total. So not many less. I think LSU had the best season. I think Alabama is the best team.
Yeah, I'll just say my quick thoughts before we move on.
I went long on that.
We have a super chat to get to as well. I think talent-wise, LSU had the better team, but the 1-2-3 punch from Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith. I mean, if Jalen Waddle would have been healthy all season, who knows what they could have done on offense. But it is a shame. Again, I would have loved to see this Bama team against LSU. I'm still going to give the slight edge to LSU just because I don't have their schedule in front of me. I remember the Texas game. That was a close game, but I don't think LSU had really any close games for the most part. At least Bama, that Florida game was close. They were close against Ole Miss. And I still think it's a close one, but I'll give the slight edge to LSU guys.
The LSU Alabama game was the closest game on their schedule last year. That's
right. And Alabama almost won that game.
They beat them last year. Texas 45-38 on the road, and then they beat Bama 46-41 on the road.
There you go. So, guys, Reed wants to know real quickly before we move on. What about 2013 Florida State? How well do you think they match up with these two teams? Remember, they're the highest scoring team until 2019 LSU beat them by 3. Not only, I think, was Florida State the best scoring offense in the country that year, they might have been, I think, the best defense in the country as well. I think they had like a 38-point differential. So, I mean, overall, that was a good Florida State team. Of course, it's tough to say because that was, 8 years ago now that we lost Todd Jameis and them. But that Florida State team was dominant. I mean, they were crushing everyone by like 40, 50 points. I think that's when they played Duke in the ACC title game, and they beat them by like 40 points. So that was a good Florida State team. I will say that. How they compare against these two, I guess it's kind of tough because that was 8 years ago.
That Florida State points per game, they finished second in the country. They averaged 51.5 points a game. Their defense or opponents' points per game, they finished first at 12. So
yeah,
an unreal differential.
Yeah, and they had some talented players on that team too that are notable names in the NFL. So I like that comp, that 2013 Florida State team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I think that's not talked about very often either.
What was that?
I said a team that's not talked about in the conversation of best teams all that often either.
Yeah, it's not, and I think it really, if you go back and you look at some of the players that they had, and I think 2014 Florida State is in that conversation too. Was it 2014 when they lost to Oregon in the Rose Bowl? I think that the Florida State team in 2013 was probably better, but there are a couple of teams that I think you can actually throw in here, and I think it doesn't just come down to the defense as a whole or like who your quarterback was, but if you pinpoint teams that essentially had that three-headed dragon on offense like this Alabama team did essentially last year with LSU, and you have Burrow, Edwards-Helaire, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson. If you go back and you look at some of the Bama teams from, even 2016, that team might be one of the best teams to never win. If you go back and you look at 2004, SC had a 3 or 4 or 5-headed dragon on offense and won. There are a bunch of those teams that you go back and you look at like all over the field. You have these insane players that you can compare. I think you can make those comparisons, but also part of the reason why we get so many comparisons with recent teams is just the way that the game has changed in the last 25 years too.
And social media plays a big part of it as well, because no matter where you are in the country, you can see highlights instantly or watch a game on your phone. So technology has really been a big part of it, not to get dull, Silicon Valley on you, but it really has played, yeah, it really has played a major factor in it. And you can see these things and you get notified when they happen, which is something that you didn't have 10 years ago.
But also, you think these USC and Notre Dame teams of the 1970s were throwing the ball 65 times a game? No, they were not.
Establish the run.
Yeah.
Establish the run.
RTDB, run the damn ball.
All right, guys. One more thing I do want to talk about, then we can get to our final thoughts, takeaways from the game, and that's Devontae Smith. We've been talking about this the last few weeks, how this guy, I think we kind of knew the last few weeks, especially after winning the Heisman, especially what he did to Notre Dame, that this guy was something special. But the fact that he did essentially all of his damage last night, again, in the first half, 12 catches, 215 yards, 3 touchdowns. He very well could have finished with like 20 catches for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. Guys, I got his stats up on the screen right here for the season. So 117 catches. I think it was like 26 best all time, something like that. His 1,856 receiving yards are the 6th most all time. His 23 receiving touchdowns are the 5th most of all time. So, Guys, this could be just in your lifetime or just overall in general. Not saying is he the greatest wide receiver we've ever seen in college football, but again, like what Josh was talking about earlier with Joe Burrow, he had the greatest season we've ever seen from a quarterback. He's not the best college football quarterback of all time. Is this season from Devontae Smith the greatest season ever from a wide receiver in college football?
Like you just said, Blake, the wording of this question is very important. Greatest season ever, not is he the best ever. I want to reiterate to a conversation that obviously most people aren't aware of. Anybody who's a Patreon member with us and is in our Twitter group chat who participate in our fantasy league would know this. We had a conversation about Devontae Smith being a legitimate Heisman candidate weeks ago. And part of the conversation was, how does he compare to the last wide receiver who won the Heisman, which of course was Desmond Howard at Michigan. And we all love Des. And something that was brought up was that his return game, or how he was as a punt and kick returner, played into him winning the Heisman Trophy, which, yes, that's true. But he could have won the Heisman Trophy that season, likely just on his wide receiver stats and how good he was, not just that season, but in his career. He was an unbelievable wide receiver. You just toss in the kick return stats, and that solidified him as a legitimate Heisman Trophy winner. And you compare him with Devontae Smith, and yes, Smith returns punts and returned punts and returned kicks this year, but he by himself was the best player in college football this season based solely on his receiving stats. Ignore the punt returns and everything like that. It was significantly better than the wide receivers who we've seen in the past win the Heisman Trophy. And his punt and kick return stats literally did not play into him winning the Heisman Trophy at all. So yes, I think this is the most impressive season we've seen from a wide receiver. I think, yes, maybe it does help a little bit to have Mac Jones have an incredible season. Yes, it does help a little bit to have the number 1 or number 2 receiver on that team at the time, Jalen Waddle, go down hurt. It helps, but it also speaks to his ability as a player to come back for his senior year after everything he's been through, to get another chance at a Heisman Trophy, to get a chance at a national championship, and then to be as good as he was, in the first half of the game last night. I think it shows that, sure, maybe he's not the greatest wide receiver of all time. We talked about this last week. I don't know if he was the best wide receiver on that team last year. But yes, this to me is alone at the top of the best wide receiver, a best season we've seen from a wide receiver likely ever.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, after the first half he had, I was hoping he'd somehow get to 2,000 yards, because going into the game, I was like, well, there's no way. After he had 115 yards in the first half, I was like, he needs, 144 more? Like, if Ohio State scores some points, he can do it. It was unfortunate he got hurt. But receiving yards as a whole, his season still ranked 6th all time in terms of receiving yards in a single season in college football. Only one player has ever gotten to 2,000, and that was a Nevada receiver named Trevor Inslee in 1999. Look, I think this is the best receiver, or the best season a receiver's ever had. I mean, just the way he dominated every single opponent he played. I mean, we talked about Sean Wade. He beat a guy like Wade. He beat a guy like Stingley against LSU. No Notre Dame guys could stop him. No Florida guys could stop him. No Georgia guys could stop him. Nobody did. I mean, it was simply the way he went out and dominated every single opponent. We've talked about how hard it is for a wide receiver to win a Heisman Trophy. I mean, you even look at a guy last year like Jamar Chase. His season ranked 14th all time in receiving yards, and he had 15 games. It's also the fact that Devontae Smith had 2 less games than he would have in a full season to do this. It's just unprecedented. The way he went out and dominated teams and really at the end separated himself as the Heisman winner, you just don't see that these days. I think hands down greatest season a receiver's ever had.
Go ahead, Blake.
Well, I was just saying, I like what Lyle mentioned right there. The fact that Devontae Smith should have had 2 more games because, if this was a normal year, Bama would have played a 15-game schedule. So let's just say Devontae Smith does what he was doing pretty much on average. He probably would have gotten, they would have played, Mercer or Chattanooga or some team like that where he would have gone for 200 yards, something like that. Devontae Smith would have easily eclipsed 2,000 yards. He could have finished with 2,200, 2,300, probably would have finished with 135, 140 catches, and his touchdowns would probably be at maybe 30. He honestly could have had 30, and then there would have been no questions asked. I already think it's a pretty no questions asked, but just 2 more games. Even then, looking at Devontae Smith's game log, guys, for whatever reason, in the final regular season game of the year, in which Alabama beat Arkansas by 49 points. He had 3 catches for 22 yards. So that, for the most part, that game you take out of the equation already. So this is technically an 11 or 12 game stretch that he had where he put up these numbers. Because again, we're not going to count that 3 catches for 30 yards. So he did this in 12 games. So even out, you give him 3 full games, and who knows what these numbers could look like. And to close out the season, before I let Brady go right here, going back to the game against Mississippi State on October 31st, these are what he's done to close out the season. 11 catches, 203 yards, 4 touchdowns. Then against Kentucky, 9 catches, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against Auburn, 7 catches, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against LSU, against Derek Stingley, who's going to be a first-round pick in next year's draft, 8 catches, 231 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then against Florida, 15 catches, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns. Notre Dame, 7 catches, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. And against Ohio State, 12 catches, 215 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Because, like, you look at his stats from the beginning of the season, not that they were awful, but it definitely took him some time to get into the groove. Now, obviously, Jalen Waddle getting injured, that definitely is what helped increase these stats. But to start the season, 8 catches for 89 yards, no touchdowns, 6 catches for 63 yards, 1 touchdown, 7 catches for 73 yards, no touchdowns. Again, great numbers for any other receiver, but by his standards, that was a slow start to the season. So, again, a few more games under his belt where he was finding this groove like this, where he was finishing with 10 to 15 catches, 150 plus yards, multiple touchdowns with these. It truly is kind of scary to think about what his numbers could have been. It's really unfortunate that we didn't get a 15-game season, because he would have finished with the most receiving yards all time, likely the most receiving touchdowns all time, and he definitely would have been close to, I think Zay Jones has the most catches all time. I want to say like Zay Jones, I think, had like 160 catches one year. That's the record or so I don't think he would have gotten that, but he definitely would have been top 5 in that.
This was a trivia question.
It was.
I think
that I somehow got right.
I think the only guy that even can be put in the conversation with the season Smith just had is Michael Crabtree. But even then, like, I'd still take Smith.
So it's like Josh said earlier, it is a very tricky, wordy question. It's, did he have the greatest season? I say yes. And that is because, like something I brought up earlier, the amount of exposure that was put onto him and Alabama this year. We saw Zay Jones have a great year a few years ago, but it went under the radar. He had 160 something catches, whatever it was. I think this is the greatest season we've seen a wide receiver have. I'm not saying he's the best pure receiver. I'm not saying he's the best pure route runner. I was just saying this is the best, hands down, the best season we've seen a receiver have. And in watching the game last night, there was, high praise all over, but this one was what really got me. There was comparisons of it, and then we saw one of the greatest other athletes of all time, if you want to drop that lower third, Blake, is some guy named LeBron James said Devontae Smith is one of the best pure receivers I've ever watched, like a mix of Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison. 2 of my guys I watched growing up being a Colts fan, and Blake, you brought this up last week, is if he's getting comparisons like this already, just wait till he gets, in the NFL and see what he can do there. And maybe you put him up there with hey, maybe this guy's kind of like a Randy Moss or whoever you want to compare him to. But having LeBron drop this comparison is I think pretty spot on and telling of what we saw from Devontae Smith this season as a wide receiver.
Yeah. I know we talked about it, but in the chat was it yesterday. The fact that now, because it seemed like Jamar Chase was going to be the foregone conclusion first receiver off the board, it's going to be a good conversation now to see who's the first receiver between those two taken. We have a few super chats to get to. Before I get to those, I just want to quickly go over Devontae Smith, where he finishes. Again, Devontae Smith, he won't, but if he wants to come back and run it back and win another natty with Bama, this whole team can. They're not going to, but this is where Devontae Smith is likely going to end his Alabama career overall in NCAA ranks. 114th overall in catches with 235. But then again, if he just would have had like 20 more catches, he'd be like in the top 60. And this is also considering the fact that Devontae Smith in his rookie season, or his freshman season, I should say, only had 8 catches for 160 yards. Granted, one of those catches is one of the biggest catches in Alabama football history, but essentially these are what he's done in 3 years for the most part. So now, catch-wise, what was it, like 120th, I just said. Receiving yards, he finishes 23rd all time with 3,965. Again, had he had another 600 receiving yards, he would have been in third place all time. He was only 1,300 yards from the most all time. So had he played more his freshman season, he very well could have got that number. Or if he wasn't playing, with 3 or 4 other first round draft pick wide receivers on that team as well. And receiving touchdown wise, DeVonta Smith is 5th all time with 46 receiving touchdowns. He's 14 away from setting the all-time record, but he was only 6 touchdowns away from being in second place all time. So again, had he just played more his freshman year, this is a guy where you actually could make the case is the greatest wide receiver in college football history because top 6 in receiving touchdowns, top 25 in receiving yards, top 120 in catches. But again, that's essentially in 3 years with Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Mechie. I'm probably missing a few other names.
Also,
it's
it's worth considering how balanced Alabama is as an offense too. Like this isn't Mahomes at Texas Tech who threw the ball 150 times every weekend. No. They look at his running backs who have been at Alabama over the last couple of years and how many carries they got. Like the fact that Najee Harris had 294 touches this year between rushes and catches. He ran the ball 251 times this season alone. That's almost double what DeVonta Smith had in receptions this year. So think about how many plays now he is being completely taken out of the equation for. And he's still putting up those type of numbers. And it's been like that for as long as Saban's been at Alabama.
Like I said, I know he won't because he's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft most likely. But if he just said, you know what, let me just run it back at Bama, assuming he has a season like he did this year, he would literally finish his career in college football with the most catches, the most receiving yards, and the most receiving touchdowns of all time.
Do we see the reunion of him and Tua next year in Miami?
At this point, if you're the Dolphins, how do you not? Well, then again, if there's that Deshaun Watson trade idea floating around. But if you're the Dolphins now. I guess it's a good problem to have, trying to choose between DeVonta Smith, Jamar Chase, if they want to go Penei Sewell. But that'd be something, guys. A few super chats to get to before we get to our Q&A. Is there any other just takeaways you guys just have from the national championship game? I know we spent about an hour talking about it, but is there anything that we didn't mention? Anything you just want to throw out there?
I got one thing. We need the mega cast for everything. I love the different options of watching a game. I always resorted back to Herbie and Fowler, but I loved switching back and forth between some of the other ones. We need more MegaCast and more Nickcast, more Nickelodeon.
Yes.
Yeah, it would have been really nice to have young Sheldon come out and explain targeting. That would have been great.
Gosh. All right, guys. So let's get to some of these super chat questions or just comments. This goes back to when we were having the greatest team discussion. Stan Fran Fan 30. That's a tongue twister right there. Says 1869 Rutgers is the greatest team of all time. The first win in college football history. That was another trivia question that was done earlier. I remember Brady got it right. Brady, who did Rutgers beat in that game?
It was like Princeton. I think it was Princeton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Princeton.
Yeah.
It was Princeton on that one. All right, guys. So again, if you have any comments, questions, anything you'd like to throw on the screen, you guys can donate to the super chats. It could be as little as $1. It could be however much you want. We're not going to ask for $1,000, but if you want to throw $1,000 that way, we'll get you on the show. So if you want to donate $1,000 right now, we'll get you on the show, guys. This is a kind of a good one from Vicente. He wants to know, is Mac Jones overrated? He passed to a lot of wide open wide receivers, and a lot of his receivers are going to be first round picks. Look what happened to Tua at the next level, and he was considered elite. Well, I guess the first thing I'll say is, Tua was hurt this year for the most part. He was kind of dealing with some injuries. I just don't think that when he was thrown to the Dolphins, Devontae Parker, he was kind of hurt. Mike Gesicki literally is the most up and down tight end there is. So I'm not going to give Tua too much flack for that. But I don't think Mac Jones is overrated. As we've seen when quarterbacks come into games that aren't really prepared or aren't really as good, if you're not a good quarterback, you can look awful. And so being a quarterback's the toughest position out there. And I'm not going to say he's overrated. Will he succeed in the NFL? I'm not exactly certain. I don't know if he will, but I don't think he's overrated because, again, you still have to, I don't know. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but I feel like he had a completion percentage of over 70%. You still got to do all this stuff, but it does help having a guy like DeVonta Smith and Jalen Waddle to throw to throughout the season.
I think his game translates perfectly to the NFL. I think it's very Justin Herbert-esque. I'm not saying he's Justin Herbert, but it's very Justin Herbert-esque, and you saw how that transferred this last year.
Yeah, and I think obviously, like you said, Blake, look at his receivers who he threw to. Look at the weapons that he has on offense, and the protection that he has on the offensive line. I mean, he's got Leatherwood. He's got Dickinson, who won the Remington this year and was hurt. But
the right tackle, 6'6", 370 pounds.
Is that Evan Neal? I think he'd be like a top 10 pick too.
But beyond that, an overrated quarterback doesn't serve as a backup for 3 years and then come in for his senior season and throw for 4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns while throwing 4 picks. And Blake, his completion percentage was at 77.4%. And beyond that, he comes in and he hits 15 different players this year in the passing game. 15 different guys. Yes, he hit Devontae Smith 117 times this year for 23 of his 41 touchdowns. Sure, he hit 15 different receivers this year. But beyond that, there was something that Herbie pointed out last night on the broadcast, which is something, and yeah, I mean, we watch a lot of Alabama football. You kind of have to when they're the number one team all season long, and they're always on national television. But look, I think I had watched more Alabama football between these two playoff games and the national and the SEC championship game than I did for most of the season. Because if we're being honest, I don't think any of us watched every single snap of Alabama's 10 regular season games this year, but watched every snap of their 3 postseason games, offensive, for defensive, every snap. And what's so impressive to me is I had a lot of faith in Mac Jones coming into this season, but it's the fact that he goes through his progressions so well. He's not a running quarterback, but he handles pressure in the pocket so well. He evades tacklers so well. And I mean, you look at what he did last night. Sure, he hit Devontae Smith 117 times this year for nearly 1,900 yards. He's not the first guy he looks at every play. He goes through his progression so well. And if you take one of those end zone cameras on, preferably with him coming toward you, which you could see on the mega cast, they have a bunch of different angles and a bunch of different broadcasts. And if you go and you look at the highlights and film of him, he looks at every single receiver unless it's a design play, like it was to Devontae Smith on that touchdown we keep alluding to where he swung out of the backfield. And that really flies under the radar a lot when you talk about Mac Jones, because you also talk about Devontae Smith if you're talking about Alabama. You talk about the two of them in the same sentence. And I think that's why he gets overlooked a lot. I think he translates really well to the next level, and pro scouts are going to notice those things about how well he evades pressure and how well he goes through his progression. So no, I don't think he's overrated at all. I think he was just slept on for the last 3 years because the starting quarterback was Tua.
Yeah, I agree. And first off, just to also express my thoughts on Tua, he's going to be fine. Like, he was a rookie. He didn't even have a full year. He was injured, didn't have receivers. Like, he'll be fine. Look, there were comparisons this year comparing Mac Jones's numbers to what Joe Burrow was doing last year. If you mean he's overrated in the sense that you don't think he's as good as Joe Burrow, like that makes sense. I don't think NFL-wise, prospect-wise, he's Joe Burrow. But he's certainly not Jake Coker, like, if that's what somebody's trying to say. Like Mac Jones was really, really good this year. And there's a reason people have him projected in the first round. Some people think he might go to the Patriots at 15. Some people might think he might go other places. But yeah, like Josh said, his progressions were good. His peripheral vision is good. He can throw the deep ball. He can throw every route. Like, he was really, really good, and he proved it to people this year. Yes, he was overshadowed by guys like Devontae Smith, sometimes Najee Harris, that made huge plays. But you don't finish top 3 in the Heisman, win a national championship, complete over 70% of your passes, and have a chance to go in the first round and are overrated at the college level. No, I think Mac Jones was really good.
He also has pretty good athleticism too. You know, he's not going to be a guy who can, scramble his way around the pocket like a Justin Fields or a Tua or a Zach Wilson or one of those guys can. But, he's got enough athleticism. Like I said, he's not going to go top 5. He's not going to go top 10. But a comparison for him, like I said, is a Justin Herbert, where he will come in and he will make a splash and he will be just fine in the NFL. I think he's going to be, I think he's a prototypical NFL player. Not the prototypical NFL player like we've had Trevor Lawrence hyped up to be for so long, but I think he is an old-fashioned, very good transitional NFL player, and I think he'll do that when he gets to the next level. Hey, I've seen him at 21 to the Colts too. So have him sit behind Phil for a year and learn from old man Rivers. But the Dolphins need The Dolphins are setting trends right now. Old Man Rivers, you like that, Josh? Yeah,
Yeah.
The Dolphins are setting a trend. I think we're going to start seeing a starter and a closer in the NFL.
I love it. I just want to mention, Brady, that you mentioned Mac Jones's athleticism, because his athleticism won me $25 last night when I took the over of 3.5 rushing yards for Mac Jones.
Let's go.
He finished with 11.
Let's go.
Initially, it was at 1.5, and then it somehow got bumped up to 3.5. But I do like the idea of a starter and a closer for a quarterback. I think that's fantastic because Fitzmagic, I mean, his name is Fitzmagic for a reason. Poor Dolphins. Guys, Connor, he said, when we were talking about the best team debate, you guys forgot about 2018 Clemson. They were the first team to go 15-0. How do you guys think that team would do against 2019 LSU and 2020 Bama? Now, remember that
once.
Now, if we were to take these three teams, without a question, the defense from Clemson in 2018, they're clearly the winner. Now, you do remember this is the team that gave out Nick Saban his worst loss while at Alabama. I think they beat him by 24 points. I want to say, but that was the freshman year. Trevor Lawrence, everything was clicking for them. It is a tough one because, again, out of these three teams, they have the best defense. But I think in regards to offense, they're third on this list. So, how do you guys think that would shape up?
Well, kind of like what I said earlier, we were having this same conversation between 19 LSU and 20 Bama last year with 19 LSU and 18 Clemson. So I think what you said stands out, Blake. I think that the 2018 Clemson defense is going to be a difference maker. If I'm looking at defense, I think the edge goes to Clemson 1 and then probably LSU 2. But yeah, a playoff or with three teams, let's say a round robin where everybody plays each other once. So you each get 2 games and then kind of see what happens then. That'd be interesting. I don't know. I still think I'm leaning a little bit toward LSU just because I think that they were really impressive. And obviously they're the first team to go 15-0. I don't think that says a lot because like I said, how long have we been able to see a team go 15-0? 6 years? I mean, it doesn't say a lot. Who's to say that, the 2010 team couldn't have gone 15-0 if they had that opportunity? So I don't know. I mean, I'll lean toward LSU for now, just because I think they were that impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I've said a lot of really good things about this Clemson team, and for good reason, because like Connor says, 15-0, national champions. I mean, they dominated Nick Saban in that national championship game. I would still take LSU at 1, and it's really close between these two teams. I think a good matchup would be to simulate 2020 Bama and 2018 Clemson, but
I'm on it.
It's all so close. I mean, all three of these teams were so good in their own right. If I had to rank them, if you're asking for a ranking, I guess I'd put that Clemson team third, but it's the margin is not by much.
I'd put them third as well, and that's just because they relied so much on their defense. Granted, Trevor Lawrence did have a great season, won the national championship as a freshman, whatever. But the front seven for that 2018 Clemson team, that was a year led by Christian Wilkins, wasn't it? Yeah, it was
your pick, honestly.
Yeah, seriously, it was scary how good that Clemson front seven was. So it's so tough to compare three. Comparing two is a little easier, but comparing the three teams is it's pretty tough because each of them have their extreme strong suits. Where the front seven from the 2018 Clemson team, you have the explosiveness and the showmanship from that 2019 LSU team, the wide receiver core, the three-head monster from Bama. So just there are so many different pieces of each team. It's pretty tough to compare.
Well, guys, just for the hell of it, I decided to spin it, and I decided to do Bama and Clemson because we figured that LSU, they're the best up there. Alabama, they came out on top, 54-37. So again, this determines nothing, but for our sake, for having fun, it says Bama would have won by 17 points. Again, guys, if you have any questions, topics of discussion, anything you'd like to hear our opinions on, you guys can hit us up in the super chat. This week, it's only coming in yellow. So I don't know if there's a problem with that, but they're only coming in yellow. So normally you guys get different colors, but it looks like you're only getting yellow this week. Guys, Steven Smith wants to know, again, what are your thoughts on the final AP Top 25? I did load it up on a graphic. So let's see, unless I'm going to have to do like a screen share. Well, it kind of goes right there. So
That's fine.
Everyone just tilt a bit.
everyone just tilt a bit. Let me get his comment off the screen here. So thoughts on the AP Perfect?
Oh,
Wait,
this looks great.
Hang on. I kind
All
of
right,
like.
guys, I
Can
don't
we
know
drag it around?
So I don't know.
No, you
What's
can't.
up?
They
So
can't
yeah,
drag it around.
unfortunately,
I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, we can't drag it. So hey, it's a perfect spot right there. All right, guys, we love talking about the AP poll, especially now at the end of the season when it really doesn't matter. But what are our thoughts or what are our takeaways looking at how this final top 25 turned out?
It looks fine. I like those bottom three teams, Ball State, San Jose State, and Buffalo from 23 to 25, respectively. Big fan of that. How many will you ever see a Power 5 conference champion not ranked in the AP top 25 at the end of the year again? I'm going to say no. Oregon is not ranked.
Yeah.
And won the Pac-12. And obviously there was kind of, I don't know if there was controversy, but it was just kind of a tough situation for the Pac-12. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There aren't many negative takeaways from this when it comes down to the end of the season and you see how the playoffs play out. No pun intended with the word play, but like when Alabama does that to the two teams they play in the playoff after Ohio State already blows out Clemson in the playoff, there's just nothing else that would make me complain because those top four or those top six, we'll say, are the ones that matter. And those are the ones that played out. Maybe not as everybody expected, but it kind of settled everything else for the whole season, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Nice to see the group of 5 teams get some respect in the end. Cool for San Jose State, Ball State, Buffalo. But yeah, I mean, I think it's about what you'd expect.
The one thing that I have a problem with, and it's a very minor problem, is if you're going to have Notre Dame be a playoff team, no matter how bad they lose, they still have to finish in the top 4, I think. So having them finish 5th, I get the loss. It was a bad loss, but I think no matter what, you are a playoff team. You were one of the 4 best. I don't see really any justification why you can put them at 5. So that's my only negative thing about that. Like Lyle said, love seeing the group of 5s. Coastal in there. 8 of them, yeah. 8. IU up there to 12, even though they dropped 5 spots and they're still finishing 12th. Never thought I'd see the day. Joel Klatt had them ranked at 7 and they're way too early. Top 10 for next year. So I don't know what the hell that was about, but he did. So
who do you have at 7? Sorry, you're thinking like
he had IU at 7 and it's way too early for next year. But my one hindrance, like I said, was having Notre Dame at 5. I think no matter how bad their loss was, they still deserve to be 4 because they made the playoffs.
All right, guys. So, yeah, I mean, my takeaways is, it's AP poll doesn't mean a whole lot. I like seeing all these group of 5 teams cracking the list. Ball State, San Jose State, Buffalo. Those are awesome to see. I like what Brady said. Like, I get moving Notre Dame down because they did lose back-to-back games, and they didn't look good in either of them, but they were a playoff team. And I don't know about moving them down. It's nice to see, again, Cincinnati being there at 8. BYU at 11, Indiana at 12, Coastal Carolina and Louisiana, Liberty, they're in the top 17. So I really did enjoy seeing that. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't have the first AP poll. What?
I just realized that Indiana is the most represented state in the AP poll here. They have 3 teams.
Yep.
Well, there you go. I like how you're able to figure that out because I wouldn't have been able to, but that's all right. So let me throw this off the screen. Let's get to a few things now, guys. I'm sure you guys have been reading the comments, but in case any of you haven't, do any of you know who the only quarterback is that has beaten Mac Jones while Mac Jones was a starting quarterback? So Brady knows. Josh or Lyle, have you looked at the comments?
No, but I know who it is.
Josh, have you looked at the comments? If not, I want to take a guess.
I have not.
So obviously it was last year when he was a starter in those last few games when Tua was injured.
Bo Nix, last game of the year.
Damn right.
Bo Nix is the only
I did
quarterback
not read that
Mac
comment.
Jones is a starter.
Yep.
That's
We
awful.
love to see it.
Well, yeah, that was the best game of the season for him.
Yeah, it still wasn't very good.
All right, guys. So again, if you have any questions, any thoughts, any takeaways, we'll throw short round here. We have 5 minutes or so left. So again, any questions, anything like that, hit us up in the live chat. Hit us up there. Let us know what you'd like to hear our thoughts on what you'd like to hear us talk about. Short round, man. Too bad we don't have Josh's Wi-Fi lagging, so we can laugh from Josh. I mean, knock on wood right now. But
You're not going for with me.
yeah, so
Not
far your
once.
Wi-Fi connection has not been spotty for us today.
Not once. I haven't even pinwheeled when I've been sitting here, boys.
Look at
Same
that.
with last week. Same with last week.
All right.
All right, guys. I think we gave Super Bowl predictions a few weeks ago, but things have changed. So, guys, any changes yet in who's winning the AFC?
Chiefs.
Yeah, I said it last week. Over the last 13 months, when the Chiefs have played all their starters, they've lost one game. Like, the Bills have a chance, but if anybody's going to repeat, I think it's the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think Lyle brings up a good point. I watched the Bills this past weekend, and they didn't look all that impressive. They got the win, but it was a sloppy game. But I think the Chiefs are the favorite, and I think they will. But if any team could do it, I think the Bills can knock them off.
Hey, I'm just glad that my Saints over Bills prediction is still alive. So I'm going to stick with Saints. I'm going to stick with Saints over Bills. Guys, Lonnie wants to know, is Bo Nix a first rounder?
No. I'll say he gets drafted. I'll say he gets drafted in the 4th or 5th round at the highest. Unless, obviously has the most unbelievable turnaround, has a Joe Burrow level turnaround next season.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he's currently draftable. He's definitely not a first rounder.
Not even close.
Not a first rounder at all. I think he could be a late, 4th or 5th. And Blake, back to what you said, by the way, about the games from this past weekend. I had a 6-team parlay, went 1-5 on it. So picked 6 games and only got 1 right. So
I was watching today Bleacher Report betting. I don't know who they had on, but he gave his picks. He gave literally, I think it was 5 or 6 yesterday in regards to like spread, over, under, and prop bets, and he missed on all of them. Yeah, he was like over 5, over 6. So you hate to see that. All right, guys, Golden Jaguar. And I say Jaguar because, yes, it is Jaguar. 2001 Miami Hurricanes, many consider to be the greatest college football team of all time, or the 2008 Florida Gators, led by one Tim Tebow.
It's a good question because obviously I think you see a lot of these other comparisons with more recent teams. I think these teams actually match up pretty well because especially when it comes down to Miami, you always see the 01 or 02 Miami versus 03, 04, 05 SC. So this is one that I haven't seen in a long time. I think I'll go Miami just because as a whole, I think they were a better team. I think they were a more hard-nosed team, but 2008 Florida was one of those teams that I think was more dynamic, and obviously 2008 to 2011, I think we saw a lot of changes in the game where you started to see like air raid offenses evolve. And I'm not saying that was an air raid offensive team, but I think that Florida Gators team is a good like team that kind of ushered in a transition period in the way that offenses ran. So I think they're a more dynamic team than that 01 Miami team, but I'm going to go with the Canes.
Yeah, it's close. I mean, that Florida offense versus the Miami defense is an interesting debate. I'm going to go with 01 Miami too, slightly.
I'm going 01 Miami. You look at the group of players that had Ed Reed, that had Frank Gore, that had, I believe, Andre Johnson. Just a group of elite players playing on that team that all went on to be great NFL players as well. Florida had some guys who went on to play in the NFL and were great in college, but I think the 01 Miami team will go down as one of the top 3 best teams in all of college football.
Well, guys, I went.
There are so many drafted players on this team.
I think Miami has the record for most NFL drafted players. Guys, I went to the simulator,
of course,
ran it through, crunched the numbers, and we had a 1-point game. We had a 1-point game with Miami coming out on top, 30-29. 30-29, thanks to a game-winning touchdown as time expired for Miami. Guys, with 3 minutes and 9 seconds left, Florida scored a touchdown to take a 29-16 lead. And in 3 minutes, they blew a 13-point lead to lose by 1 point.
Miami's strength of schedule that year was not even top 20 in the country.
Jeez.
So
yeah, dude. Well, if you look at that 01 Miami team, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger had 3,100 passing yards. That's pretty impressive too.
Boy,
I'll tell you what, not the Red Hawks, Brady.
Oh, wrong Miami. You're right. I'm sorry.
I'll tell you what, that Florida team, it had some characters on it.
Dude, they had some killers. They had some killers on that team.
Can I say that they had 11 guys on their team end up in jail at one point?
And then I don't think that even includes like Riley Cooper, right?
No, Riley Cooper had his own problems.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember who else was on it, like the Pouncey brothers and like obviously Aaron Hernandez and Percy Harvin. Like, I don't know, there was just some characters on that team.
Wasn't Cam Newton there too as like the backup, or was that 2009 when he was there as the backup? No, I think it was 2008 because 2009 is when he went to a community college, I think. So I think Cam Newton also was on that 2008 team. So Urban Meyer, how'd you get that one done? All right, guys, we got enough time for one final question. Right
Jeremy
now, of course,
Shockey was on that Florida team too.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Saints legend Jeremy Shockey
On that
Guys,
Miami team. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Short round wants to know if you were a pizza topping, which topping would you be?
That's a good one. I think I would be. I'll stay away from like the traditionals of like the cheese or the pepperoni. I think I'm bacon, the little bacon bits, and the reason why is because I like bacon, and I like it on burgers or pizza. Not always on pizza, but I like it on pizza. You know, I like bacon in my omelets or on my breakfast sandwich, things like that. So I think I'm gonna go with bacon. Maybe sprinkle on some oregano. I could be oregano.
Sea salt and oregano.
Yeah, as long as you do it like that.
I guess this is kind of similar to bacon, but for similar reason, I was going to take sausage just because it can go with so many different things. So,
yeah. See, there's one part of the pizza that covers all of it, and that is cheese. I like to cover everything that we do. I encompass all. The Conference of Champions. I would go cheese. I think cheese is the most versatile topping on a pizza, or pineapple, one of the two.
Sorry, I'm choking on my water here. Well, guys, so man,
for those of you that don't know,
Blake's gonna be the grease.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Oh, dude, I love me some good grease. Now, guys, as the best host out there, it's only fitting that I'd be the best topping out there, which is pepperoni. Yeah. I say this to MJ all the time. Every time I have a slice of pepperoni pizza, why is pepperoni not used more just as a snack? Because I love taking the pepperonis off the pizza, just eating pepperoni straight up, some crisp, good, maybe little burnt pepperonis. Ooh, those are the best. Just like me. Guys, it actually looks like we do have one. Yes, Brady. Yes, Brady said, I'm the crust. Because I like to be on bottom. All right, guys, we got time for one final question, and this comes from our man, Hoodie Mello. How do you guys think DJ is going to do at Clemson? Do you think he could win the Heisman next year? I think he was like top 7, top 8 in updated Heisman odds for next season. We saw what he did against Notre Dame. I mean, maybe that's because, one, there was no real actual film on him, so maybe that was more typical for Notre Dame, but he looked fantastic against the Irish on the road, his first career game, or I don't know if he saw garbage time up to that point, but his first career start. I think he's going to do fine at Clemson. I think he's going to be great next year. It'll be interesting to see how Clemson does without Trevor Lawrence. How they do weapon-wise next year. They're going to be losing Etienne. I don't know if Justin Ross is going to be returning next year. He might, just because his draft stock is pretty low right now because of his whole injury history, if he'll even return to football. But I think he's going to do fine.
He is the 3rd highest Heisman odds. Spencer Rattler's 1st. Bryce Young is 2nd, and DJ is 3rd.
Okay.
I don't think he'll win the Heisman. I think he'll be in the conversation, obviously. I mean, he was a highly touted prospect for a reason. We saw what he did against what was, I guess up until these last few weeks, what I thought was the best defense in the country in Notre Dame, or the most balanced defense in the country in Notre Dame. But yeah, I think he's going to be really good next year. We'll see what Clemson does because they're going to lose a lot. Not a lot, but they're going to be losing some key players. Obviously, on defense, Skalski's coming back, so we'll see what we do with what we get with Clemson. I think they're obviously a top 5, top 10 team, but when it comes down to DJ, I think that I think he's going to have a really good year.
We saw what he could do already this year, and I think that was against a top-tier talent, and so you're not going to be playing that talent every week, and I think he's going to transition just fine. No concern at all, and I think he can and will be in the Heisman conversation if he plays like he did against Notre Dame earlier this year.
Yeah, number 1 quarterback recruit in the country for a reason. We saw what he did in such a short sample size, and there's a reason everybody expects Alabama and Clemson and the traditional powerhouses to just turn over and be great next year and continually after. Not just because of how they recruit, but specifically with Alabama and Clemson, you have two blue chip players coming in to take over at quarterback. And if I read right, which I think I did a couple weeks ago, that Dabo Swinney said, yeah, like Justin Ross is trying to come back and play football next year at Clemson. So if he's somehow healthy and he recovers from this injury and you give DJ that weapon, I think Clemson's going to be really scary.
Yeah, so it's going to be exciting to see, but Clemson and these quarterbacks, man. Poor Kelly Bryant, because he's going to be sandwiched between, Deshaun, Trevor, DJ, and then Kelly Bryant's just over here chilling. You hate to see it, but that does wrap up this week's edition of the Harris Highlight Show. Again, it looks like next Tuesday, I think, we'll be back, and then 2 weeks from today will be the 5th annual Harris Highlights Award Show. It's definitely a fun one, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to follow the show on Twitter at the HH Show _. Definitely a must follow if you're on Twitter, along with Instagram at Harris Highlights Show. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. You can find us over there. You guys can become a Patreon member, get into that fun Twitter group message. You guys can get, behind the scenes, Zoom call with us sometime in the next month or two. Again, as little as $1 a month. It's $1, guys. I mean, it's $1? Sorry, I don't have. I only carry big bills in my wallet. It was, I guess you could say, it was a bad week at the sports. But
that includes Big J, Jordan K.
Hey, Blake, make it rain. Make it rain. Come on,
make it rain.
Do it,
Nice.
do it.
However, I did get
Flex on everyone, including us.
I did get a Powerball and a Mega Millions ticket because it's worth both of them.
Can you hold that up so we can see the number real quick?
Yeah.
No, because
we can still pause that. We can go back and pause it.
That's gonna be tough.
If it hits, guys, if it hits the Mega Million, I'm $600 million richer next week. Everyone right now that gives this video a thumbs up and comments right now in the live chat before we end, I'm going to send them $100. So if I win the $600 million, drop a comment down right now saying anything you want, and you're going to have $100 coming your way next week. And yes, Brady, I will give you $1.
Yes. Hey, why don't you just build us a full studio? We can just do this full time.
Yeah,
sure we can.
Yeah.
And I'll still have $599 million and $900,000 left.
Chief salary. I'm only $300,000 a year.
All right.
I'll be willing to go lower.
You could invest in a sports team.
No, I told MJ, I said the first thing I'm doing with that money, I'm investing whatever team I can. I'm buying a team. I'm owning a team.
Minority owner of the Dodgers.
I'm owning a team, and then I'm calling David. I'm saying, David, here's $1 million. Not your David, our Coney's David. I'm saying, come build a Coney's out here so I have it at my disposal.
Yeah.
Here's $1 million for the store. And then I'm building a massive studio out here, and I'm paying you guys. I'm not minimum wage, but I'm gonna make you guys earn your dollars.
Right.
We lost our train of thought here, guys. Harris Highlights Award Show again. That's in 2 weeks. Next week we're going to be going over the categories. If there's any categories you'd like to suggest, hit us up on Twitter at the HH Show _. If you're out there, Bowl Mania winner at TapDal2020, DM at the HH Show _ and send us a screenshot of your winning team, and we'll get you on a future show in the coming weeks. If not, well, we're gonna go to the runner-up, and we'll eventually get someone on. It's just a matter of who. Guys, any parting words before we head out for the week?
Top of the league, Man United. Please don't lose to Liverpool this weekend. That'd be huge. Other than that, have a great week, guys.
I don't have any Liverpool stuff down here.
That's good.
Damn. Here's to making it through a full season. I didn't know if we do it in college football, but they did it.
Oh yeah. Shout out to college football for pulling it off and getting the job done. Well done, Josh. Best of luck to your Rams this week. Here's to hoping that they can pull off the upset and we can get a Rams Saints rematch in the NFC Championship game at the Superdome, so the right team can rightfully win the game and advance to the Super Bowl with no help from the men in the stripe. All right, guys.
Don't throw a pick in overtime, and everybody's happy.
Drew Brees, what were you doing? All right, guys. And a short round says, enjoy some FC. Maybe we'll do an FCS preview in the coming weeks. Get a full FCS preview.
We should all pick one team to root for.
North Dakota State, Debs.
No, James Madison.
Eastern Washington.
Yeah, I think that would have to be mine since I tried to put them in a Power 5 conference.
Yeah. My favorite FCS and always has been. It would be obviously Sacramento State beating my boys UC Davis in the Causeway Classic every year. Let's do it. Let's go Hornets.
All right, guys. So stay tuned. Give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment down below. Subscribe. Follow us everywhere. Those are our Twitter handles. Go follow all 4 of us. And something special will happen if you follow all 4 of us. Can't tell you now. You got to go follow all 4 of us to find out because trust me, it's well worth it. For at Josh Schaefer 25, at Lyle_Goldstein, at Brady Klein, I'm at Blake H. Harris. Thank you guys so much for watching. And we're going to see you guys right back here again next Tuesday night.